And welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Real Life Fishing. For those of you keeping score at home, here's how much of that map data was lost. Yeah, pretty bad. Looks like, I don't know, probably a solid 5 or 6 hours worth of drive time on the boat is going to be necessary to get good data again to put that back together. But yeah, expensive mistake on my part. Hopefully you guys all learn from it. But by the way, the blue background on here for the base map, I chose Auto Chart 2D, and then the overlay on this is the auto chart layer. So the base layer is going to be just the outline of the lake, just the shoreline, and then my data is overlaid on top of that. So that's what we're looking at. Yeah, a whole bunch of that yet that needs to be re-recorded, but that's life, I guess, right? So back for another episode of tips and tricks, though. So if we go back here and go back to our chart view, right? So as promised, I went and looked these up. So auto zoom and auto range. Auto zoom will automatically zoom the map in and out in accordance with boat speed, right? Unfortunately, Humminbird does not provide any more information than that. So I don't know if it's going to be the amount of zoom that you like. Try it out. If you like it, then use it. If not, then don't. Auto range automatically zooms the map so that it's your boat icon and the next waypoint in the route. Not sure why that would be useful, but that's what that does. So anyway, we'll go over to, let's see, we'll go to nav. It's the next one. So you can manage waypoints, routes, and tracks here, right? So this is all the recording waypoints that are in here. You see category. I should probably clean all these things out. They're actually pretty irritating to look at on all the various lakes I go to. But yeah, so waypoint settings then. You can change the default waypoint icon. New one. So when you create a new one, do you want it to just use a default, or do you want it to ask you to select one? Right, you set the default here. And then, of course, save those settings if you made a change. So we're going to say no. Save tracks defaults. It's going to ask you if you want them to be visible or not, and what style you want. And, of course, save your changes. If you want casting rings on or off. Right, so casting rings. So we'll put these on to, 20 feet. How about? And then go and find a waypoint. So here's a waypoint, and so that's a casting ring then that it drew around that. So if you wanted to, stay 20 feet away from your waypoint instead of driving over on top of it, right? If you wanted to cast to it, well, then there you go. Now you know how far 20 feet away is. When the little boat icon gets over that ring, then you're all set. I'm gonna go and turn those back off again. So there, that ring is gone now, right? So waypoint proximity flags. So that's this little guy up here now. It tells me how far away I am from that flag, right? Or from that waypoint, which is good because I just had a 20-foot casting ring on, right? But so as I go over, right? So it'll tell you how far away a waypoint is, which is nice. But so turn those back off. Waypoint decluttering. We'll remove a whole bunch of waypoints on there. Let me see if I got some here. I'm sure I've got a spot that's got a bunch of waypoints. Yeah, here we go. So here's a whole bunch of waypoints on the screen here, right? So we'll turn on waypoint decluttering, or turn off waypoint decluttering rather. And we get all the names all over them. And then if we turn waypoint decluttering back on, we just see the dots. right? We don't see the waypoint names and all that kind of stuff. And that's all waypoint decluttering is. Pretty easy, right? So we've covered, where are we down to? Trolling grid rotation. No idea what that is, to be honest. Track point interval is how often it's going to record a point on your track, right, as you're driving the boat along. Every 1 second, it'll record a point. Minimum track distance for it to record, 16 feet by default. Course projection line, you've got standard, single vector, or course over ground, speed over ground, or you can turn it off. I just leave it on standard. Heading line I have off. And then your heading offset, if your heading sensor isn't exactly lined up perfect, you can adjust it left to right by 30 degrees. I'm not entirely sure how useful that is or how you would determine that, but just mount it as good as you can. Continuous navigation mode off, on. I'm not sure what that is. I'll have to look at that for you too. Sonar, so the display spectrum, full, wide, and narrow. That's based on your 2D spectrum. All right, so you can choose which one you want to see on your 2D display. On this particular unit, I really don't pay much attention to a whole lot of these, except for side imaging, because that's the only imaging that I view on here. I don't, like I said, I've got my 2D down inside of there on the other graph there. So surface clutter, that's a big one. Hard to talk about though when we're on dry land. I'll have to make a video about that on the water. A lot of these actually, we really should do this on the water. So we'll have to do that one day. Alarms though, so you can turn on alarms for depth. So if you run, if you run into 5 foot of water, you'll get an alarm. I just have those off. I pay attention. Fish ID alarm. You can choose to show you all size fish, medium and large, just large, or not show you, but beep at you rather. Low battery alarm. A lot of guys will turn this on so they don't run their cranking battery down. I don't really have that problem, so I've not configured that. Same with temp. You can configure a temperature alarm based on the water temp. Off course alarm is when you're doing navigation on here, which I don't bother with at all. So that's the 328 is the default. 164 is your arrival alarm, which every once in a while I will hear on here actually if I do a go-to with the Altera, because I've got iPilot link, so it is linked to the graph. Drift alarm I don't use, but you can set that so if you drift a certain distance, it'll alert you. You set the alarm tone, right? So there's low, medium, and high. Medium's the default. You can set a timer. I don't use that either. There's start the timer. Setup, these are your basics, right? So choose feet, fathoms, or meters. Of course, I want feet. I'm an American. Temperature, again, you can do Fahrenheit or Celsius. Again, I'm an American. Feet, statute miles, feet, nautical miles, meters, nautical miles, meters, kilometers, right? I prefer feet, statute miles. Units speed, right? You choose mile per hour, knots, or kilometers per hour. I want miles per hour, again, I'm an American. User mode is custom angler. We talked about that before, right? Of course, we want English. You reset the trip log, restore defaults, format your nav directories, digital readouts, right? So we've got overlay, which is what you see here, and then you can change it to off, so there's nothing, or boxes, right? So if you choose boxes, over here, you can customize what's in the boxes. So that's select readouts. So here you can say readout 1 is going to be depth, readout 2 is temp, so forth and so on. So you can customize those. Unfortunately, you can only customize those when you select boxes. If you're not doing boxes, you get what Humminbird says you get, and unfortunately, that's the end of that. Depth offset, use that for the depth of your transducer in the water. I don't bother messing with that when I record maps. What I want to know, I'm not so concerned exactly with how deep the water is, even though that's kind of what we're doing, right? What I want to know is how much water is under my boat, right? So if I'm floating in 2 feet of water, well, I'm not in 2 feet of water. There's 2 feet of water under my boat, right? So if you figure out, how much water your boat drafts and then where your transducer is mounted and so forth, you can set that in here and it'll take that into account. Time zone, daylight savings time, of course, position, format, right? So that's your latitude and longitude, how that's going to display. And GPS output is for if you're doing NMEA out, which I'm not, so don't use that. GLONASS I've got turned on. Time format, I just prefer the 24-hour clock, so that's what I chose there. And then choose your date format. Month, day, year is the U.S. standard. So digits format, you can do small tenths or large tenths. You see that change right over here, right? Or no tenths, right? I prefer small tenths. NMEA output, again, I'm not doing any NMEA, so that's off. Not using that. You can turn sonar off completely. A lot of guys will do that when they're working in their garage or out of the water because there's some paranoia about, killing transducers if they're not in the water when they're clicking. I've never had a problem with that. So, and then chirp configuration, right? So here's where you set your frequencies for 2D, down, and side for chirp. And if you screw it all up, of course, you can just go here and reset it, right? But so these are the defaults. I've left all these on this graph at the default. And honestly, I would suggest that you do as well. Modifying these doesn't really help you a whole lot. So that's the default 2D chirp. And then you can turn chirp on and off for individual modes as well. But so the DI spectrum, right, for your 455, 800, and mega, right, your start and end frequencies for those. And again, I would just leave all these as the default. And then the same for side, right, 455, 800, mega, leave those all at the default. And you can turn on demo mode. Find this useful if, for example, a common problem is, your right-hand imaging is very, very dim, but your left-hand imaging looks good. A lot of guys will put it in demonstration mode and see if the problem still exists there, right? And if both sides are displayed properly in demonstration mode, then the overwhelming majority of the time, that means you need a new transducer. In demonstration mode, if the right-hand side is still displayed poorly, usually means there's a problem with the unit that it's going to need repair or warranty. So you can turn sound on and off, no sounds, right? So now we don't get a little beeping when I'm moving around. I like the beeping. It just tells me when I'm moving around. Views. I think we covered some of these in a prior episode, but you can go through, look at each one of these views and decide if you want them to be visible or hidden. I've gone through here and hidden some of the stuff, but it could still use some fine tuning. And again, right, if you hold down the view button up in the corner, right, there's your shortcut menu, so you can get to any one of these things you want. Anything you choose from here that you want to jump to, right? So here, I'll jump to this, right? So if that's hidden in your views menu here, jumping, as soon as you go to it from that view shortcut up here by holding down the view button, as soon as you go to that, it's going to change it from hidden to visible, just so you're aware. So we'll go over to screen snapshot waypoint, right? So sorry about that. So what this does is when you mark a waypoint, this will automatically take a screenshot and save it onto your card. So I've got that off, but some guys will use that. They'll go back later and if you've got imaging on, for example, that's when it's really useful. Say you're driving around, because you can mark waypoints, from your imaging, right? So if I go to map up over here, And then I'm driving along here and I see, oh, there's a crib, right? Oh, I want the top. There we go. Oh, there's a crib over here, right? You can mark a waypoint there, right? And so when you do that, then if you've got screen snapshot waypoint turned on, it'll take a snapshot of that. So you can go back later and reference that waypoint and look at the picture and see what it was and why you did that. Phone Bluetooth I don't use. That'll give you text messaging on your graph. I think that's a horrible idea. I go fishing to get away from that shit. Bluetooth Talon I do not have. Wireless remote is not set up on this unit. It is on the other. You guys saw that in a prior episode as well. And network though, right? So this is the name of the unit. You just change it like that, right? Nope, don't save changes. And then network source setup. So here's where you choose where you want each of your inputs from, right? So again, this unit only has power and Ethernet connected. So everything I'm getting is from the console side imaging unit. So my 2D comes from there. My down imaging comes from there. My side imaging comes from there. Temp comes from there. And my GPS is external from the side imaging unit. And luckily, some of the graph data from, or some of the map data rather, from some of the lakes was recorded on here on AutoChart Live because those maps were completely, or those lakes rather, were completely unmapped. No data for them whatsoever. And I had never been on them before either, in my boat or anyone else's. Didn't know anything about them. So I used AutoChart Live on this graph and then just recorded raw sonar data on this one here, right? And normally what I'll do when I do that then is I just discard the AutoChart data or the AutoChart Live data and just use the sonar data to generate my maps, right? Well, lucky for me, I've got 3 graphs, I've got 3 cards, so they shuffle around a bit. And, so I had not removed the AutoChart Live data from some of those cards. So luckily I was able to at least, get a map. I don't have all of the data that I would like, right? I don't have the imaging beams or any of that information. You guys can go and watch that episode if you're interested in seeing the file size differences and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that helped me a little bit. But this one has always been set correctly, and this one is now set correctly. So external, right? So you've still got to go in here and set if you want this to be internal or external on the network source, even though it is local to this unit, right? I don't know why that is, but there it is. So anyhow, yeah, that's everything in settings in here. We'll go through a little bit more on the water, adjusting sensitivity and contrast and down imaging enhance or side imaging enhance, all that kind of stuff. We'll go through that on the water next time we get out. Should have plenty of time while I'm out mapping. I've got to drive an awful lot in a straight line. So if the lake's not busy while we're doing that, we can cover some of that stuff. But yeah, sorry this video was so long, but I figured it'd be better to just get all the tips and tricks for this, or at least go through it all into one video. Some of you might be wondering too why this is a fishing channel, and we haven't gone fishing yet, right? Well, I kind of view all of this to driving a race car, right? While you're out driving a race car, you might record yourself racing, but if you're trying to teach other people how to race, then it doesn't do those people any good if they don't even know how to drive the car, right? If you've never driven a car before and you watch some videos of a camera looking out the window to, try and teach you how to, hit the apex of a turn or, when to brake or when to shift or that kind of thing, right? I mean, first you gotta have the basics of the car down, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at here is everything that's on the boat and in the boat, so that we can, when we get on the water, we can focus on, actually fishing and catching some fish and, not spend quite so much time discussing transducer placement and GPS puck placement and things like that, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll keep it under 20 minutes anyway. Hit that subscribe button down in the corner. Thanks. Have a good one.